Hello and welcome to this episode of the Hello Firstname podcast, Season 2. My name is Rasmus Hårlin, author of the book Hello Firstname, and the theme of this season is how to solve the content crisis for personalization. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to this very first episode, actually the season premiere of the Hello Firstname podcast. So this is Season 2, this is Episode 1, and I'm super psyched about this. So the theme of this season is how to solve the content crisis for personalization. And that is because solving the content crisis is what stands between us as marketers finally being able to scale personalized communications in the way that we marketers have always wanted. So looking at all the insights from last season's interviews and the feedback we got from the book, it stood pretty clear that there's definitely a lot happening in the world of personalization. In fact, you could say some of the content in the book is already outdated, so we're really working like crazy to get that fixed. I'd say especially two things stood out, and I think once we're done solving the data crisis, which is like still real and it's still happening, a lot of companies are struggling to get the data right. Once that's done or done enough, the content crisis suddenly becomes very real. How do we manage that? And how do we make the solution to that scale? So second thing that now stands clear to, I think, most marketers, hopefully, is that Gen AI has become like really big and for good reason. So the natural question is, how can Gen AI be applied to help us actually solve the content crisis in general, but also in terms of personalization? So luckily, these two topics, they do go hand in hand and will somehow merge in the content layer that Scott Brinker and Frans Riemersma, guest of today, predict will emerge. Content layer with a content pipeline that will have like strong parallels to how the data layer works. So the questions are then obviously, so how does the content layer look? When we zoom in on that, can we deconstruct that? So right from the birth of, I don't know, the master file and the master content into having like one-to-one personalized content for each customer. And how can Gen AI help us make the content layer flow more efficiently? What are the do's and don'ts? What are the top use cases, the top tools? Who's already doing it? That's all what this season of the Hello Firstname podcast is about. So whom better to kick this off with than Frans Riemersma? Frans is, you're my co-author of Hello Firstname, also the founder of MartechTribe, and you are an international keynote speaker and sort of a MarTech celebrity. You're doing the MarTech Trend Report with Scott that I'm sure the listeners are familiar with. If not, then you should at least familiarize yourself with that. Frans, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Man, it's so great to talk to you, and I love how we brainstorm every now and then. Yeah,
true
definitely
pleasure.
A new update for the book.
Yeah, a lot has happened, even though it's like only a year ago. But who could have thought that Gen AI was suddenly going to be so big? But let's take one step back first, because all the listeners might not know you. So you built your MartechTribe.com for those wanting to check it out for some years now. Could you briefly describe what MartechTribe is and what your role is there?
Yep. MartechTribe is a company, but we do a lot of research and collaborate with a lot of tribe members, hundreds and hundreds across the globe, experts in their fields, and we bounce off ideas and we basically try to understand how MarTech works. And we've built up a data warehouse that consists of 3 components, 1,500 global stacks across 16 industries.
Yeah, wow.
14,000 tools globally. Across 49 categories, and
French.
Yeah, it's crazy. And 4,500 features/requirements in a data warehouse and database, just to figure out, okay, what makes a killer stack?
Yeah.
And we found some great angles in the past 4 or 5 years where we see there are huge differences between industries in business models, B2B, B2C. And sometimes also the size of the company. So smaller companies struggle with different problems than big companies. And we know in this order, we know how to help clients. So that's how we make money as a company. We benchmark individual stacks of companies, let's say show me a sample, and how do I compare? Where am I behind? Where am I ahead? Where
How
to
do I
invest?
stack up?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
pun
can I
intended.
stack up? So that's it. That's
Yeah.
what we do, and that's a lot of fun and very rewarding.
So when would a company typically ask for that kind of service? That's before they do what, or because they are looking at, I mean, probably redefining their Martech stack. But when does that come up as a priority?
That's a very good question. It depends on who is asking, and there are three types of people asking. Marketers, they normally
Mm,
want to find new use cases, new tooling, new strategies, because they are responsible for generating revenue. So
yeah,
that's new stuff. Whereas marketing ops wants to fix stuff. So they
yeah,
get so many requests from marketing that they go like, where to prioritize? So
yeah.
that's a
So
different question. So optimize MarTech. And
yeah,
then the third one is IT or CEOs that want to reduce MarTech
yeah.
because we have too much. We have duplications
Really,
that cannot be. I
exactly.
look at the balance sheet.
Yeah.
Blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess in the conversations with, for instance, the marketing leaders, IT will sort of need their own ground because
Yeah.
I mean, marketing can say, "Oh, we need all these tools because blah 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 blah." So to have something, to give some kind of pushback that is grounded in something like real research, I think that would be like a super strong tool for them, but also for the marketers, obviously, to realize, okay, so are we going overboard with these things? Are we getting carried away with vendor presentations? Like
Yeah.
a sort of a sanity check on that.
100%. And the good thing is that these three different types of clients, they're all right and they're all wrong. They just don't know where they're right and where they're wrong. So
Yeah.
IT says we have three email systems that can't be right. And then marketing goes like, yeah, but one is for transactions.
Yeah.
One is for the newsletter and one is for drip campaigns.
Yeah.
Yes, they're all, it's like comparing vehicles, right? They all
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
wheels. So, but it's a bike, it's a car or a truck. So
Yeah.
it's, but then IT is
There
not,
can be reasons for that, obviously, yeah, and IT will probably not see it. Okay, can it send emails? Check, then we're done. Yeah,
but then again, where marketing is not so good at is decommissioning tools. And this is something where IT is right. So
yeah,
yes, you have too many tools, but don't
yes,
kill the email systems, for instance.
yeah, yeah. So I always tell marketers that they need to be absolutely sure that they can demonstrate the ROI of
Yes.
the MarTech tools that they deploy. Because if they cannot, even though it's a good idea and it is actually bringing value, if you cannot document it, then you're in a situation where you need to defend yourselves only using sort of vanity metrics and such. And as soon as you go outside the marketing departments, sort of the marketing lingo. Vanity metrics, they don't count. Nobody
No.
understands them. So I need to translate everything into a language that everybody understands, and that has to be money. So even though we are all about the content and creating good experiences and such, really need to count that money.
And I like what you're saying because that's exactly we developed a metric, a new metric, just to figure out, okay, if we're getting better at this, do we see better company results?
Yeah,
And in some cases, we found it makes your company result worse if you
yeah,
increase your maturity. So
yeah.
maturity is not always desired. So now
No,
you need to know, and we make a distinction between green, yellow, and red MarTech. So
mm,
green means you're good, more of that, okay, grow there. Red means you don't have the resources. Maybe you should decrease it. This is where IT is interested. The green is
yeah.
where marketing is interested.
Everyone
And
should
yellow,
be interested in both, I guess.
well, they should operate as a team, but they
Yeah,
have still their own, org structure and their own targets. So it's
yeah,
their own mindset. So, and in the middle, you have marketing ops who says, I want to optimize, but what? And that's the yellow MarTech where, okay, if you have that right, then you
mm.
have a lot less requests, a smaller backlog, etc.
Interesting. So green one. So is that for areas of specific tools or capabilities? Then you have like a green area and say, okay, this is working for us. This is
Yes,
also what's working. This is what's working in the market. We should probably keep doing this. Yellow
yes,
one could make this work, but this really needs looking after. The
yeah,
red one, we could probably maybe disinvest in this because at a general level in the market, this is generally not something that correlates with, I think you're measuring it in like revenue per employee, as I
correct.
recall. which is
Yes.
bound to be completely different industry to industry. So
Yes.
there's also a thing there that probably you need to consider.
Yeah,
So
100%. Spot on.
you're working so closely with Scott Brinker that I am pretty sure that people know on the Martech Trend Report and MartechMap.com. I hope I'm saying this right. I think
Correct.
I accidentally said Marketing Tribe and not MartechTribe before. But
I'm not
the,
angry.
the stuff that you don't look angry. The stuff that you're doing with Scott, can you tell us a bit more about what are you doing there? What is sort of the process? And it seems like you have like a yearly cycle of coming out with this and really educating the market.
Yeah. It's so exciting. We got to know each other 4 years, 5 years ago. We met before, but really working together through a podcast. I was already collecting a lot of European vendors and
Yeah.
shipped them over through an Excel sheet to him
Yeah.
on a yearly basis.
Yeah. Love Excel
He
sheets.
Yeah, exactly. And now we started to working on that Martech map together. And then we found that we have pretty similar ideas, and
Hmm.
sometimes not. I mean, but it's really helping us to get a good grip on what's happening. The Martech map is 14,000 logos. I
Yeah.
mean, it says nothing. But what it
No.
allows us is really to investigate, hey, where is it growing? What is shrinking? We have more data about just the logos, the size of the companies, the age of the
Yeah.
company,
Yeah.
etc. And I know on top with my stack data, where does it pop up, at those tools. And we have fascinating conversations. So we said, maybe we should just write a report. This is like 2 years ago. So in May, we released a new Martech map, but now accompanied with the state of Martech.
Yeah.
And now for the end of the year, every December, we publish another report saying, this is Martech for 2025, for instance.
Yeah. So and then
What?
that's up and
Yeah.
coming right
Yeah.
now. Actually, yeah. Already
Yeah.
signed up. I suggest everybody to do the same. So really looking forward to that. So 2 yearly sort of sit downs, the Martech report,
Yes.
and sort of the Martech. Yeah. So the report is in the summer, right? And what did you call the other one? That was the state of Martech. Or
State of both are reports.
what reports? Yeah.
One is accompanied with the Martech map in May.
Yeah.
And
That's
now in
me. Yeah.
December, we often also do a survey. And this
Yeah.
time we did a survey on Gen AI.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Really looking forward to see the results from that. I already saw some of it, but yeah. Already. All right. A few years back, I think that was probably from the like sort of trend report on this. You were discussing this concept of a content layer. So I think most people are familiar with the data layer. Like you have a data lake, you might have a CDP, you have you're doing calculations and propensity scoring and using ML and so on. But then you're talking about the fact that listen, we believe that half of marketing, or if not half, then at least a large part of it is content, because that's what people see. If there isn't any content, there isn't basically any marketing. And the same goes for personalization. So for those familiar with Hello Firstname, there are two sides to personalization. There's the insights side, which is really refined data into insights, and then there's the content side. But the content layer will emerge. That was like a prediction. What was? Tell us a bit about the content layer. Which kind of thing is that?
I think you mentioned it earlier, like the content crisis. Honestly, the content layer is you could argue isn't even existing, but we need one.
Yeah, yeah,
And you often speak about the content pipeline. I mean,
yeah,
how does content end up in a piece of what is it? The messaging.
yeah,
And we have a data layer normally, which is consisting of CDPs, cloud data warehouses, maybe CRM and automation tools that, collect all the data, we stitch it, and we try to understand what is the client actually doing.
yeah.
So it feels to me like we know what the client wants and we
Yeah.
understand them. We even
All the
can
insights.
audiences and segment them and know
Yeah,
what type of message but we're still mumbling
yeah,
because there's no content. And I
yeah,
mean, how many times do you hear this? Oh, we can do real-time data streaming. We know exactly,
yeah,
we can feed and ingest all the audiences, and then we wait 2 days for the artwork. Really?
yeah. Exactly. Yeah,
What?
yeah. And we're not sure what to say or how to say it, but we have the perfect segment.
Yeah. Perfect set. And we did a little bit of A/B testing in the content side, but the other department that sends out and ingests it into the engagement tools doesn't know.
Yeah, they're doing branding campaigns. They're too busy with that. So yeah.
That's it. And the content layer is basically, if you would, cut it into pieces, it starts at the very basics with a brand guideline, a CI guide.
Yeah. So
Okay,
those are like that's the starting point. Those are the phases in the content layer.
100%. That's your identity as a brand. Okay, and that provides some really, really master core logos, imagery, statements, slogan, etc. Okay, cool. Then that's completely cut off from the next step, which is digital asset management or even product information management. So the product content or really the assets, even MDM, master data management. It's all different universes. They hardly integrate. And then the next step is, for instance, okay, now maybe web to print, web to publish type of stuff, or maybe personalization, or you shoot it into the engagement channels. 3 different universes, worlds, and so it's the content layer for me is you integrate this and make this seamless so you can feed real time, and that's impossible. So far, we haven't been able to do that.
So in much the same way, just trying to paraphrase here, so much the same way as we have today, at least in some companies, a pretty well-defined sort of flow of data, from like collecting data to cleansing data and to analyzing data to getting insights and doing propensity modeling and finally actually exposing that or serving those insights, I would call them at that point. In some the same way, we don't have it yet, but we're looking for, so how does the parallel content pipeline look in the content layer? Because now it's like a content lake, maybe even, so it's everything is up here and there, and we have small ponds here and there. But how can we put this into like one big content pipeline, so we have like a structure on it, and we can take things from one step to the next, and we can repurpose content, and we can enrich content, and we can make variants of content for the segments that we might be using in personalization. That's sort of what I'm hearing you say here.
Yeah. And I've been looking into that also together in conversation with experts like yourself. There are some fundamental differences between the product, the output of your data layer, which is, let's say, audiences, and the other one in the content layer, which is high resolution files often, even for your bannering, but it can be videos. So one is zeros and one, text-based, more or less, where the content layer is really visual-based, video-based.
Yeah, especially in the beginning of the content pipeline, I would expect.
Yeah. And that is the big blocker, because with data, and now the data layer people hate me and say, that's relatively simple. And that was complex enough. We're closed, but that was not an easy thing. But we're getting there. Data streaming, we're really, and the big companies are hammering on it and boosting it in an impressive way. I love that. And that's a kind of, you described very nicely, it's a sequential type of thing, because you can do it with textual data, zeros and ones and blah. In the content layer, you cannot do it sequential, because there between every step, there are 3 major problems. One, for making that translation from one to the other, you need human creativity. Well, try to mimic that. That's one. Second one, we have huge files. So here we have our agencies, but here we have our Photoshop files, high resolution, and sometimes gigabytes. I mean, seriously, how can you even render that, let alone, and that's the third one, integrate that or transfer it? So this is where we have the likes of WeTransfer, right? To transfer files. So those are 3 major blocks that stopped us from having a similar sequential approach until now. I think with generative AI, we can solve that, because it's human creativity out of the box, and then it's also rendering files like at top speed, and it can also integrate on the back end with agentic AI and what have you. So there you go. So I think we're really at at the start of something completely different. And the approach shouldn't be sequential. I think it should be kind of what I call parallel. Sorry for making it so complex, but between those steps, you should do in a parallel of data layer. You should source the content. You should clean it. You should enrich it. You should consolidate it, etc. But in every step. So at the brand step, at the campaign step, at the content, collateral content, snackable, whatever we want to call it. I don't care.
Yeah. Interesting. So which role what's the overall role that Gen AI plays in that pipeline?
A very good question. I think so. Those brand guidelines are now just a bunch of, sometimes even a printed brand book. All those elements should maybe go into a customized LLM of your company. So let's call it a brand LLM.
Yeah.
So it really trains not only with your assets and with your payoffs, but maybe even with norms and values and the reputation and the personality of the founder or the brand itself. I mean,
we spoke about the master file at our dinner in London a few weeks back. So really putting all that you can together in this brand master file, everything that the founder ever thought about, the raison d'etre of the company and the values and the offerings and the value proposition.
I think, for instance, at IKEA, the founder, Ingvar Kamprad, the first two letters of IKEA, he wrote a book, and a small booklet for the people that he employs, and it's called I think it's the Furniture's Manufacturer Testament. So, and he goes like, it's not difficult to build a piece of furniture of $1,000, but of $80. That's complex. And those kind of philosophies, that whole concept, that whole vibe and feeling, because you buy from humans, you don't buy from a company or a brand. And you touched upon something don't want to
like
miss
a manifesto.
that. You touched on the master file. And you and I know, we're from content, personalization. We know the master file is the one file you really should use. That's the origin of all the other files, the variations, the versions, and for campaigns, for banners, for what have you.
So everything has to be in line with that somehow. Not only the graphics.
And there's one big old wisdom in our content world, which is don't share the master file with the countries, because they will mess up big time. So, but that is, again, coming back to, it lacks human creativity if you translate it into local files. It's huge rendering and it doesn't integrate. With a brand LLM, you have all that covered. All your prompts are in there, all your assets, all your slogans, all the history. And then if you then allow countries to take from that and say, hey, is this what we're building? Is that against brand guidelines? And it gives you a verdict, like to the left here, logo up there, I don't know what, this text a bit more directive. Then you're in a completely different space. And maybe you can even derive a campaign LLM just for specific campaigns.
So basically we'll have like, in the future, you could imagine having like this big master file of everything that is unique about the company, really. Everything that captures the soul of what was the intention of the file. That's all this qualitative stuff. And that can be big. That can be also pulling on existing assets if you sort of want to create this sort of in retrospect. So pulling everything that's unique about the company, the thing that you cannot, the thing that sort of needs the essential, like, secret sauce of human ingenuity.
Yes. Yeah.
And then from there, we could have like different agents, AI agents, taking that, and we basically build up our own LLM, and we have these agents then that have the responsibility for translating this, or for repurposing that into sort of the next part of the content pipeline.
Yes.
Because I can see. So we're at Agilic, we're also experimenting with some of that, and what we see Gen AI is good for. It's not for creating like the first key message or no. So because I mean that you write something with ChatGPT, and unless you brief it like really well, it comes up with something that reads like you it reads in much the same way as you perceive stock photo. So
Yeah.
it sounds like stock photo in a way, and certain words are used too much and so on and so on. So
Yeah.
really, I mean, it's still good because it happens really fast, but you really need to infuse it with what I
Yes.
believe we here have as the master file. And
Yes.
once you have that in place, actually what you can get is quite good. And you get it very fast. You probably still want to QA it manually,
Yeah.
especially if it's content that is actually made for humans to look at.
Yeah.
What we found though is that actually creating content, for instance, for localizations. So you and I discussed how Europe is a special melting pot of personalization because I mean we've
Yeah.
always been used to dealing with all the different localizations, the different countries, the different cultures. Those are essentially segments. And then there's the issue that we also have Germans living in France and and French people living in Germany. So
Yeah.
really the whole localization approach obviously isn't enough. You need to go deeper, and then suddenly it's about personalization. Anyway, to cut back to where I was, instead of translating stuff from one language to the other, we found that actually recreating stuff from the get-go, from the master file or whatever sort of files you have at that place in
Yeah.
the content pipeline, creating that to different localized versions, or even to different segments, but using the ChatGPT, you have that work from the same piece of sort of content, or that LLM at that point creates much better result than doing the translations, because the translations, and we all know this, they're often a bit off, whereas actually asking the LLM to create something in a specific language from the same standpoint generates much better results. So that's one that thing that we've seen, and actually the Gen AI is really good at that. Does that
I want
relate to the experiences that you have?
100%. I was just going to interrupt you brutally, but
Yeah,
here
which
we
is
go.
fine.
So the generative AI survey, I've seen one in April done by a separate company, and we that was about 100 people. We have 283 people submitted their entries, and we asked about Gen AI. How do you use it, or did you even stop using it? Now here
Yeah,
we go. The Gen AI used for content ideation is very popular, and nobody
hmm
stops using it.
yeah,
But the publishable content, they use it, but they also stopped. Not in equal amount, it's still a lot of people. But I think this is where you made a very important statement. The brand LLM needs to be infused, and then publishable content will become more reliable and trustworthy. Right now, people
yeah.
say, "Yeah, it's okay. It's not that brand, that we
Yeah,
want, and that message and that
something missing.
feel." Yeah,
Yeah. It's still, and I think this is partly because people are not, prompting it properly. But you can also get to a point where you need to spend so much time on your prompt that you could just have done it by yourself. And
there
so
it goes.
unless you have that like master prompt from your master file, and if that's always part of what you do, and you're
Yes.
taking the next derivative and maybe having an agent, an AI agent for creating it and for sort of transferring it into the next step of the content pipeline. And
Yeah.
another agent, which is like a police agent, who's
Yeah.
sort of I'm the master file agent, trying to look at what have we created here, and is it still in line with all the thoughts and ideas of the founder, and what we want to be to whom, and our value proposition, and so on.
Yeah.
Those will be and then there'll be less to do with like manual looking into that.
It would solve so many things, and it makes so much sense, I would say. And I can even imagine that the brand LLM will become probably one of the most important assets in your company. I mean, the
Yeah,
brand is always reflected on a balance sheet, and it's um, we don't even know what it is, and now it becomes a real thing. It's not just a
yeah,
bunch of master files; it's something actionable.
yeah.
It's a game changer. I
Yeah,
really
you
think.
can apply the brand like much more
Yes.
systematically and much more scalable. It's not just okay, let me send something back to marketing and then I get an answer back with a lot of no-nos. I can I can deploy that more easily within everything that I do, and I know that it will be at least, it will have weeded out like the biggest mishaps at least. So
And I think, sorry to interrupt, but
no,
to your point, I mean, this is your turf of personalization. We always think of personalization like a company talks in a personalized way to one person
yeah,
or a brand. But if you look at that conversation, because in essence it's a dialogue, not between a
should be.
company and you as an individual. Well, yes, I'm painting a picture of the future where we want to go. That's what we're trying to fix as marketers, is that you have a one-on-one conversation, maybe even with the founder, the original founder, maybe no longer alive. I don't care, but it's more like, so I want to ask Ingvar Kamprad from IKEA. So I need a chair for this play. Do you have something?
Yeah.
It's that, if you get that feeling, because
Mm.
when is a brand successful? When has it personalized well? If you as a customer have the feeling, this brand or this founder, this guy understands me. That
Yeah.
was exactly what I didn't even know it, but I
Yeah.
really needed that.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, where a brand LLM can really add a lot of value. So it's not only tone of voice and content, it's also
Mm.
products, and preferences and
Definitely.
combinations and
Yeah.
what have you.
Yeah. So imagine having a conversation with the founder of said company that knows everything about you specifically and your history with the company. That's
Yes.
basically what we're trying to achieve with personalization. And yeah, I would love to have that conversation. So I just like the feeling that this stirs up with me. The emotion that I get is, I would love that, because that would really make me feel special. And and for the brands that I subscribe to, if they were reaching out to me with this type of insight, listen, Rasmus, I know all about why you are engaging with us. I know how you've consumed our products or services in the past. I really think that this thing that we're launching right now, this part of it, not this part, but this part here, is spot on with what I believe that you're looking for right now. Uh, I would welcome communication like that. That would genuinely make my life easier.
I think I'm 100%, and it makes it more human, more accessible.
Yeah.
You buy from likable people, and
You buy
maybe
from
even
people.
on a
Yeah,
consent level, it will change the game, because
yeah,
this is what you want to hear, right? And also, you can build in your consent and your governance into that brand LLM.
exactly.
Don't say these type of things. Don't break privacy rules or legislation.
So we were at together at the Martech World Forum in London a few weeks
Yes.
ago, and I remember hearing this presentation from I think it was Anita Murthy, a really brilliant lady, and she said, put more emphasis on the brand. She was highlighting the importance of handling the brand because that's really unique. I think she put it in a kind of a nice way. She said, when you turn off all your advertising, that's when you see how strong your brand is.
Yes.
So turn off paid media, only reaching out to the ones that you have maybe on owned media, and then relying on people to come to you on top of that. That's what's left. And I think having this thing in place with like the content layer, where we have the master file and we have all the derivatives that Gen AI help us create, accentuating the brand and really like kind of putting that on steroids and making that shine through, that will really make that brand thing be much more
Yes.
prevalent, and you can see that it pops up suddenly everywhere, and it's much easier to control, have that brand control and make it part of everything you do, instead of relying on sort of old Q&A processes or QA processes. At
Yeah.
least that's what I'm looking at. So
Mhm.
coming into the personalization part,
Yeah.
um, that's when I would say that's when you stop looking for the best piece of content for the average customer, but really trying to figure what is the right content for a specific user, given specific scenarios and given specific insights. So
Yeah.
really, I mean, if we go back to the bow tie of personalization from Hello Firstname, it's about tying the insights together with the content.
Yes.
Uh, and if we have these layers sort of running in parallel, you have the content layer and you have the data layer. Um, where do you do the match? Where would you say, when is the right sort of time to do the match between the insights and the content that fits?
Yeah, we're really talking future now, right? And the possibilities. But I see if you have those two layers, then in between there's another layer coming out of that personalization layer, you could call
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
And that's where it comes together. So normally we do this in engagement platforms, but
yeah,
they're not really equipped yet to merge, to converge
yeah.
the insights
Scale.
from one side of the bow
Yeah,
tie with the content from the other side, and maybe one is triggering the other. I mean, it can be that insights triggers content creation on the fly, real time.
yeah,
It
yeah,
can be the other way around, like, oh, this one is really converting well, this content, because this is not even, we couldn't even conceive until today that there's maybe something like return on content,
yeah,
which content converts well.
yeah.
We don't even calculate it, but I can imagine that if you have this in place and it's really working well, you can see, hey,
Mm,
this works well, maybe feed that back into our audiences in the data layer and optimize them because
yeah,
they're hungry and sensitive to XYZ for this individual.
yeah. So it can actually go both ways. What I'm hearing you imagine here.
Yeah,
So you have insights that can actually spur the creation of content for
yeah,
that particular micro segment or individual even,
yeah,
and continuously optimize that and see how can we make it not only good but better and better and better,
yeah,
and vice versa. You have content that you see is working extremely well for certain segments, then feeding that back to say, okay, how can we get even more insights on this particular piece of content? So really
100%.
a dualism in the way
Yeah,
that works. Yeah,
yeah, maybe, but now I'm really going wild. I can imagine that you'll have some kind of LLM on an individual level that you
yeah,
say brand plus insights
yeah,
times yeah the Frans or Rasmus LLM
yeah,
that is your message, and it's a killer message. You can't refuse it almost because it's
yeah,
tailor made. It's really something you go like, wow, this
yeah,
person, this company understands me.
yeah. I was this is funny because I sometimes use the sort of the allegory of buying a couch. So buying a couch for your living room, which is, I mean, some enjoy it. I don't. I actually hate the buying process because it's, I mean, you need to look at an endless amount of couches in the world, and I could potentially, doom scroll forever just looking at ugly or less, I mean, all kinds of couches, and it's for me that's not a pleasurable project or a pastime. I would rather get on with my life so I can go kite surfing or go on my mountain bike or go to the movies or get some entertainment instead, or go to the gym or whatever. So really, the type of communication that could help me buy a couch that I would be happy with earlier and sort of would get me out of my couch buying miserable life into something that I actually enjoy. I
Yeah,
would love that communication because I could get on with my life. And once I've done that and I've bought it, I don't want to hear more about couches because the chances that I'm going to buy any couch number two anytime soon is, I mean, it's pretty low. So in that sense, if you get the personalization right and if you're able to match those insights and content right, and using Gen AI for the content part and using, I think, ML or predictive analytics for the data part, I would welcome that scenario. I even saw an example of the opposite, where I was doing an event with Merkel that we're partnering with here in the Nordics, and this lady Pia that I was doing uh, the, uh, the the workshop with, she had this example from someone complaining to Amazon. They're actually doing sort of a quite bad review because she had been buying a toilet seat with Amazon. And then the algorithm had picked up, oh, this lady is like crazy interested in toilet seats. And now, even though she bought one, they were like continuously remarketing toilet seats to her. So she did this review where she said, listen, Amazon, I'm not collecting toilet seats. I don't have this perverted fantasy about, plastering my room in toilet seats. So have one. It's nice. I'm not going to buy anymore, no matter how much you retarget me with this. So, please stop showing me more toilet seats.
yeah.
And I think this is just a brilliant example of if you don't get it right. I mean, that's the retargeting is actually an act of personalization. It's just they're just getting it so wrong, and
We're
that can
way
be
too.
horrible. I even had a conversation with, I think it was Rob Sleeth from Love Honey, they're selling sex toys. He was giving some pretty crazy examples of how personalization gone wrong can really derail the customer journey. I mean, there's just some
Extremely,
recommendations that you
yeah,
don't want in your inbox, really,
yeah, yeah.
and there's some of their products that you don't want, anywhere. Maybe even so. So that's just really putting things on the edge there. But yeah, I
No,
think what I'm
100%.
trying to say is that I'm really looking forward to when this vision actually comes true.
Yeah, me too. And I don't know how the industry will pick up on it. So often we think that we have all the MarTech in place, and I think this is a massive blind spot. We couldn't even
Yeah,
conceive until generative AI came up,
yeah,
and they pre-processed a lot of the stuff in an LLM. We couldn't even conceive. We didn't even think about the content. I collected tools that I thought were crossing the boundaries from, integrating from one to the other. I think I didn't even reach 10 tools
no, yeah,
in the
that's crazy. Yeah,
14,000 tools out there. So
yeah. So it's too much focused on like the single use case, like making things optimal within
yeah,
the stage in the content layer, as opposed to actually bridging it into the next one.
but because that one task was already complex enough. I've worked for a company where we had a web to print module. So it's basically a template, and then a local retailer goes in and they select some images pre-selected by the brand. So and then you can pick and choose your own opening hours, your own logo, combined, co-branded, blah blah. Okay, hit render file. If that rendering, was for a billboard, it could take, I don't know, minutes, hours, sometimes days.
Yeah,
If it was videos, it was crazy, and you needed a server, park, and
size of a house. Yeah,
it's crazy, and that's
yeah,
all gone now. That's
yeah,
the big difference. So we
yeah,
were not even thinking about integrating it, it was we transfer from there. It
yeah,
was
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
file transfer or
Exactly.
FTP, whatever. But we
Yeah.
didn't even think about. We were happy we had the file, man,
Mm,
and
mm,
that's all different now.
yeah. So talking about integration, so just want to talk about a topic that you and I actually discussed also in London. So because I mean integration between data sources, that's one thing, and
Yeah,
we sort of know how to do that. It's about mapping the fields and making sure that what
yeah,
data is called here and which this format goes into the other system in this much the same, I don't know, database column or same data format, and you still know what it is, and the field names aren't like completely arbitrary. And we were discussing, how does integration look from a content point of view? How do you integrate content with other content? And I had this example of where I was actually trying to put together an LLM based on, I was trying to train it on my authorship, so on Hello Firstname, but also on Make It All About Me, which is my book from 2019 about omnichannel marketing. And then I was, for the fun of it, I was trying to also train it on the knowledge base, all the how-to articles of Agilic, and see, can we bridge that? Because then I have this LLM that I can ask questions like from a very top level on, okay, so what is a marketing automation strategy, and what are things that I should consider, and blah blah blah, and then taking it down to sort of the implementation level. How do I do that? And what I realized that with the naming conventions in Agilic at that time, there were some concepts or some topics that were called different things. So what I called things in the book, like from a what is the name out in the market, the product wasn't yet up to date with sort of applying that naming technology, because you probably realize that if you go from system to system, what is the notion of a campaign can be like 10 different things,
yeah.
or a flow or a journey can be so many different things. And I realized that there was a content gap between what things were called in the system and what things were called in my authorship. And I actually wrote an integration, which was basically
Content.
a
Yeah,
document that
yeah,
said, so in Agilic, these terms are, I started doing the field mapping, basically saying what we're calling things in the world of marketing, like on a general level and in the authorship, and what they're called in Agilic. This is how it relates to each other. This is what goes where, and so on. And that document, like in prose, like real text, like it was like an essay, actually made the LLM capable of matching that, and so it served almost like a content integration.
I love it.
And that
Yeah.
was I don't know, it just dawned on me that this is how integration looks for content. And I never thought about it before, but that's a piece of integration that it's just proves there's a parallel here. And it's
Yeah.
I'm waiting for what are sort of the other epiphanies that we get. Okay, yeah, this is the mirror image of this particular way of working with data. This
Yeah.
is just the same one for the content. I give you another example.
Cool.
So what we're working on right now is we're looking into how can we make so the repurposing of content is much easier than recreation of content. So we're looking at right now how can we take a message like in its purest form. So think like the message that fits like all segments or all channels, or like the core message. Now, how can we repurpose that into segment variants and channel variants using generative AI? So taking that from what I would call like generic execution content into personalized execution content. How can we do that? And that actually works really well, and it's extremely fast, and you'll be able to personalize much faster because we're
Yeah.
finally making the that point of the bow tie, which is the messages. We're finally making that scale, and not
Yeah.
only the content feeds. Anyway, yeah.
I
So
like, I like you're describing two types of integrations, and the first one with the content integration is, I think, necessary to build your brand LLM to
yeah,
really harden it, improve it, and it's an ongoing job. But once you've done it, you've got a body of work, and from there you can tweak, right? And but the other one is really feeding other systems. That
yeah,
if we do this in a data layer type of fashion, it's integration. It's almost like MuleSoft, Zapier, if this then that type of integration. I don't think we need that. It's more
yeah,
directly. Maybe if you create a content piece, you feed it directly into the engagement layer,
yeah.
engagement tools. That maybe they're not ready for it yet, but that's where I see it go. And if it's very powerful, as you say, and I can imagine, yeah, then you're in a really good spot.
I guess all tech vendors working with content and content or even engagement should consider how do we do an integration to the master file. So
Yes.
where in my engagement platform or whatever, where do I point to the brand master file that
Yeah.
our client has? Because
Yes.
that's going to be that's the database, for that's the content database. That's the database, the content variant, the content equivalent of the data lake, really.
Yeah, 100%. And it will completely change the game. It's something we haven't conceived yet because it wasn't possible. But yeah, I think that will be the type of integration engagement platforms will need to do. And content providers in that content layer pipeline, yeah, also have to consider. It's going to be, yeah, it really feels like a blind spot. And you don't want to know how many years I've been hammering on the fact that there is something like a data layer. It's non-existing, but it's inevitably going
Mm.
to show up one day. We just don't have the technology yet, but now we have, and it's exciting.
So this leads back actually to a pretty profound distinction, namely that of what is it that distinguishes content from data? Because some would argue, and I've seen that come up time and time again, but content, that's just data. I mean, you can always store content as data. What is it that tells you this is actually content and not data? I mean, yes, we are storing it in a database or in a file system, and it's a range of zeros and ones. But what is it that makes content content, in your opinion?
I love that question. So I have always been confused by the word digital assets. I go like, okay, so they're digital and assets, and why is that only marketing? I mean, anything, any document, even a legal document, is also a digital asset, right? Technically
Yeah,
spoke. So there's a lot of confusion. So with data, you don't send the data to your customer. Look,
yeah,
you are this audience. Seriously? What?
yeah. I'm
But
an audience.
yeah, I'm an audience. Okay, cool. I thought I
Yeah,
was one.
yeah,
But then what happens, maybe, and you see this already happening in the data layer, they suggest some content or craft some, basic email. Well, as soon as you send it out, it's content. So for me, data is listening and analyzing the customer dialogue, but you haven't spoken back, and that is content. So for me, there's a triangle. It's always, and a dialogue is a triangle. Listen, analyze, talk back. This we can do really well.
Yeah.
Talking back, we're mumbling.
Yeah. So let that be sort of the last sort of serious question of dialogue here, because we're running towards an end. It's been extremely interesting discussing this with you once again, Frans.
Yeah, with me too.
And for the audience, I would just say stay tuned, because I'm going to do a lot of follow-up conversations in this season with really interesting people, and interested, hopefully, from both the vendor side, but also from clients that are actually really pushing the levels of on this. So, for instance, I have people from Pandora that I'm going to discuss this with. I have people from Contentful, just to name like a vendor and a sort of client side brand. So that's going to be very interesting. I'm also going to put down in the show notes a link to where you can see a draft of how sort of the interplay could be between the content layer and the data layer. So I'm really happy that we can share this, and it's draft work, so we'll continuously be refining it, and eventually it will also come out in the next generation of Hello Firstname. But one last question for you, Frans. What's your own favorite use case for Gen AI? Just thing that I'd like to know actually from all the participants in this season.
What I really like is that Gen AI is helping with interpreting data. So we're using it in a conversational way, but you can really use it to interpret data, to understand your customer better. This is maybe even something not in the content, but in the data layer as well. And that's highly underutilized. So if you look at the results from the Gen AI survey that we've been doing, I think we're using 10% of the capabilities of Gen AI yet. And there's so much more to discover. So I'm playing around myself. If you talk about the favorite tool, I've been building in the background a LLM of my own stuff. So all my posts, all my guest blogs, the reports, what have you, videos, this kind of stuff, transcriptions, just to play around and get a feel for it. And just before this podcast, I sent you a link, trial for your eyes only. I've given it to some other people to sign up to play around, and it talks pretty closely to how I would talk and answer.
Yeah, I think it's less funny than you are, but that's maybe something that you can teach it.
Yes.
So I think I would add a bit of wit to it, maybe asking it to be sometimes a bit less serious, but also remembering to
I'll put a smiling face next to it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Frans. And for the audience out there, I really hope that you'll be following the season and help spreading the word about how we solve the content crisis for personalization. Thank you. You've been listening to yet another episode of the Hello Firstname podcast. Remember that all models discussed in this podcast can be downloaded and are free to use. The original book, Hello Firstname, can likewise be downloaded as either the full audiobook or as a written abstract. All links are in the show notes. The podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, the omnichannel marketing automation platform, Agilic. Visit www.agilic.com for more information.